What does it mean to be a vulnerable Christian man? Walking through life weak and powerless is not what Jesus had in mind for us. It's time to fight. It's time to get comfortable being uncomfortable. We are Obie, Shaun, Brandon, and Shane, and this is The Uncomfortable
Hello and
Truth.
welcome back to The Uncomfortable Truth. We are glad to have you today. Mr. Shaun Baker here has an uncomfortable story that he would like to tell you.
All right, so my daughter had a blowout on the golf cart, and so it got parked at Charlie Owen's house, which is our neighbor down the street. And I went over there yesterday, and every evening, 7 days a week, they have people hanging out over there at their house, and
Every
evening, 7 days a week,
boy,
they'll have
that would wear me out.
they'll have random people. These people are kind of pillars in the community.
Okay.
And they'll have random people stop by there, and they have a big family. And anyway, stop by there and just shoot the bull and talk and hang out. And anyway, so I pull up, and Charlie had already taken the wheel off and dropped it off at the tire shop. I picked it up from the tire shop yesterday. And
Wait, this is your neighbor just took the wheel off for you and took it to the tire shop?
Yeah. Had the golf cart jacked up.
Shout out to
Yeah.
Charlie here.
Charlie Owens.
Wow. Okay.
He's
What a
jam-up-
neighbor.
He's a jam-up guy.
What a gem.
I told him thank you 100 times. Drops the wheel off, and I picked the wheel up yesterday at the tire shop and brought it back, and then I'm down there putting it on, and then his son says, oh, we got some more tools over here, and he comes over there and taps me on the back, and we got some more tools over here, and whatever. I was like, okay, I appreciate it. So they got the tools.
Okay,
I mean,
yeah.
like the high dollar tools.
Okay.
He has race cars and all kinds of stuff. So they have a nice garage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, okay, cool. He said, well, come over here. And I went over there to get these. I don't even what are the impact wrenches?
Yeah. Impact. Yep.
Yeah, the air powered impact wrenches. And when I'm walking over there, he said, hey man, what's that behind you? And I turn around, and there's a snake. And I was like, what the heck? This all happens right in the middle of like 15 people, right? And I'm not going to lie. I said some choice words and jumped about this far up in the air.
But the problem was when he tapped him on the back and said they were over here, he taped the string.
A copperhead.
And
Oh,
when Shaun was
gosh.
moving, it was moving toward him.
Yeah, he's got this fake copperhead snake that looks as real as me and you right now, right? I mean, this thing looks real.
You felt like a snake was chasing you.
Yeah, so whenever I jump in the air and the snake jumps at me,
How long? What was the reaction time from when you realized that this thing's not real?
So just as soon as I jumped up in the air
Uh-huh.
and turned, and I was like, this thing's chasing me. As soon as that happened, I remembered that I saw that on a TikTok one time.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right. And everybody just died laughing. Oh, it was like the event of the night or something.
Did anybody catch this on video?
No.
What?
No.
They put
didn't-
the snake on you, but they didn't have
They
their
did not
phone
catch
ready?
it on video. Yeah, no, everybody.
Oh, man.
Yeah, no. But then they started showing me video of everybody else they had done the same thing to.
Okay.
And anyway, it was pretty
That's
uncomfortable.
hilarious. That is hilarious.
It was funny.
All right, Obie, will you open us up in prayer?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Lord, we just thank you for bringing us here safely. We thank you for watching over us and our families, Lord. Thank you for a wonderful week, Lord. We're just so thankful and grateful for this life that you've given us, for another day to wake up and honor and praise and try to plant seeds for you in this world. Lord, we know it's a broken world, and we just want to try to be a vessel for you and do some kingdom work for you, Lord, on this platform, just by telling others about you, and hopefully it sinks into one person. Lord, we just thank you. I thank you for these men that I get to do life with. I pray over them today. I pray that they would continue to just to have a great week and honor you with everything they do. And I just pray again over this podcast this morning that you would just help us to reach one person today. Help us to reach them for your glory. Thank you for sending Jesus to die on the cross for our sins. We love you and honor you with everything we do. Amen.
Amen. So a month ago, Courtney comes to me, And she says, "Hey, Shane, one of our friends, her name's Kristen, and we know Kristen and Rich, her husband, from soccer. Our kids play soccer together. She's real active in our community in Longview. And she says, hey, Kristen is doing this thing at her house and has invited us to come. I was, okay, well, tell me more about it. It's called Journey to Generosity, and it's a 2-day deal. It's a Friday night for like 3 hours and a Saturday morning for like 3 hours. And, always initially when it comes to me trying to plan something, I always have this like, I know this is probably something I need to do, but it's a month away.
Internal battle.
Yeah, I'm sure something is going to come up, and then I'm, going to miss something, and then, and it did happen. A couple weeks later, somebody planned our fantasy football draft that I had to back out of the league so I could go to those things that I already committed to. Anyways, one of those deals. It was called Journey to Generosity, and the idea of this is just being open about finances, money, and what generosity truly means as far as biblical, giving back to God's kingdom. So we had, 2 days of this.
You've actually...
We went last weekend.
Okay, so you've already done it.
Yeah. So Friday night it's a series that's very curated. This was a group of guys a group of people that got together and kind of started this, just teaching what it means to be truly generous with our lives for Jesus Christ.
In particular, money, or just in
general? All the above.
Okay.
But, we talked about money a lot, but it's not, when we're talking about generosity, in honor of Brandon, they gave an acronym that I thought was awesome. So being generous with your life, and the acronym being life, labor, influence, finances, and expertise.
Okay.
So all those things that the Bible talks about being generous with. The Bible mentions money, specifically money, about 2,300 times. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And it includes topics like wealth, possessions, greed, money mindset, contentment, investing, all those things. If the Bible Brandon's talked about this some, if the Bible talks about money that much, we really need to pay attention.
Sure.
Go ahead.
I've heard that, I read that it only says that God says to test me only one time in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
It's in Malachi 3:10, and he's talking about testing him with your tithe.
Yeah. We talked about that.
Regarding money, which is interesting.
So we talked about that, and we talked about that test. And the reason, what these guys have studied through the Word, I think the reason that God talks about it so much or delivered that message through his people to put in his holy word is because greed is something, money is something that can creep in and cause us to not move towards God, but we don't really dive in. I've never dove in to generosity the way that we dove in. And I wish I could convey it a little bit better, but, we might sit here and talk about our struggles, right? We might sit here and talk about, personally, I've struggled with porn. Obie might struggle with something else, with anxiety. Shaun might, and we talk, and it's still hard to talk about those things, but those are things that we will talk about.
Sure.
But diving into the real issue of a possible greed issue in our life is harder because it's harder to recognize. I think, and we talked about that. So I wanted to tell a story of some people that have really made an impact for the kingdom, and how. There's this couple named Alan and Catherine Barnhart. Alan and Catherine own a company. Think of it's like a big machine company. They move massive equipment. They move big stuff in manufacturing plants. They haul like big stuff. Like I'm talking about, like think of windmill wings, or like even bigger stuff than that. They have massive cranes. They put up video boards in stadiums across the country.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Big stuff. And so in the beginning of their journey, when they got married,
Are they from
I believe they're from
around here?
Georgia or
Okay.
Mississippi or somewhere. In the beginning of their journey, a year or two after they got married, they felt a calling to the mission field and were going to move to a third world country and be missionaries. At that time, he was working for his parents' company, which was Barnhart Cranes or whatever it was called, Barnhart Big Equipment or something like that. And it was a smaller operation, about 10 people worked for their company. And so when they decided that they were going to move, about a week later, his parents came to him and said, "Hey, we're retiring. We're done. So one of two things is going to happen. We're going to ask you, if you guys want to take over the company, that's great. You can have it. Or we're going to sell it. But we're about to deuces out. We're going to go sell around the world." And they ended up doing that for like 7 years. That was a dream of theirs. And so they had to make a decision whether they were going to be a missionary or they were going to take over this company. And there's a video, we'll link it in the description. There's a video that you can watch about their story. And the husband and wife are talking about it, and this is, 30 years later from that moment. And you could tell that, or she says, "I really didn't want to do that. It was in my heart to be a missionary." And he felt like the Lord was leading them to keep the company going. Who knew why?
So they were button heads.
They were, but she ended up, he said, we kept taking a vote, and it kept being 1-1. And she said, "I finally gave him my vote, but I didn't give him my heart. In my heart, in my head, I gave him my vote. In my heart, I was expecting him to fail." And so they had to work, it took years to work through that. Fast forward. He brought his brother into the business, and their entire mission of this business was to create profit for God. They didn't know what that looked like. They didn't know how that would work, but that was their commitment. And they made a commitment to themselves to put a cap on their lifestyle at the same time, which was, it'll get crazy in a minute. So at that time when they did that, the company was still pretty small, maybe, doing $500,000 to $1 million a year. The Lord started to grow that company, and they came up with a commitment that everybody was on board with, that they would give a decent amount of their profits to just give it away to Christian organizations or whatever. Ministries, yeah. So they ended up coming to the place where they wanted to give 50% of their profit of their company away every year. Fast forward to when they made that commitment, their company started picking up big time. It started going crazy. And they went from maybe doing $1 million a year to doing, and he gives the stats, to $2 million a year, to $7 million a year, to $100 million a year. They gave away, I think last year, the year before, whenever this video was done, they gave away $20 million. So I think he said that their profits were around $40 million. So, well, no, they were. And he said, I think their company now is doing about $400 million a year. What's so impressive about that is he made a commitment not to cap their lifestyle.
Right.
And so throughout those times, he said, he gave his salary. He said, we paid ourselves up to about $160 a year while our kids were in college and we had extra expenses. And he said, now, that we're older, we don't need that much. We're down to about $100 a year. You're talking about a company that makes $400 million a year. His son got on there, and his son was like, "Hey, I knew, like, I would go to school and my friends would have these things that I didn't have." And he said, "I knew that my last name was Barnhart and we had this big, massive company, but, my friends had nicer shoes than I did." But he said, I didn't really understand completely, but I knew the vision that my parents had and why we didn't have all these nice things. This dude drives like a 2002 Impala with 240,000 miles on it.
Really?
Wow.
It's so just like the level of generosity that they made a commitment to. One of the things that he said was, I'm not scared. It's not a threat to have a failing business. He said the more of the threat is to have a thriving business to take us away from the Lord. And so
Makes a lot of sense.
it does. It makes a lot of sense. And I think we need to have a plan and make it a priority to understand and to know what we're going to do with our money when and if the Lord decides to bless us with it.
Yeah.
Wow, that's good stuff. What do you think?
I think that it, to me, hearing stories like that and I wonder how old they were when they made these commitments.
They're probably mid-20s.
Yeah.
Mid to upper 20s.
Wow, so young.
Yeah.
Young.
That's very. Yeah, that's a
Just-
bold commitment for
it's-
somebody in their late 20s.
It's wise beyond their years. I feel like that they were really seeking God's will for their life at that time in a big way, and just continued to stay committed, throughout their entire life. But what an inspiring story, because I'd be lying if I didn't say it that. I have felt guilty throughout my adult life for not making commitments like that earlier on. And not
Same.
and not making and sticking to them and allowing the I guess the influence of our world and our culture to creep into my life.
Yeah, me too.
And so it's really inspiring to hear that, and I don't think it's too late.
It's never too late,
you
and I think the major problem that we deal with is raising our lifestyle when our income
Oh man.
is raised.
Yes.
And
So
then when you get to a point where do you guys remember being, younger, 20s maybe, and thinking, dude, if I make $100,000 a year, I'll never need more than that. And then when we make the $100,000, it's like, dude, if I just made $200 a year, dude, I'm perfectly fine. Never need more than that.
It's
and then
not-
we're at 200.
yeah.
It's
Trust me. Yes, you're preaching to the
it's
choir
very
over here.
convicting to look back on my life and think, okay, I didn't have a plan. So when those windfalls come in, there may be times where we have large sums of money that come in. When those windfalls come in, are we just increasing our lifestyle, or are we investing in the heavenly kingdom?
Are you being generous with your life and your influence and your money and your expertise?
For me, it's harder they asked us, of those four, what's the hardest one for you to be generous with? For me, like for Courtney and I, we've had a goal with our finances to give the majority of our money away. And it's not ours, the majority of his money away. We're just managers, right? So think of it like you're running a company and you're managing all these things coming in. Now, I'm still convicted about it because I think we can do more. With my influence, that wasn't an issue for me because I'll tell anybody anything that they want to know. The labor and time was what I circled, because in the last episode you said just be honest and say just admit you don't trust him. So me, just be honest. Like, I do not want to go out and cut limbs off somebody's house with a chainsaw. I'd rather just give you $200 and let you hire somebody to do it.
Right.
That was the hardest. So of those four, what's the hardest for you guys? Labor, influence, finances, or expertise?
I would say for me, it's finances.
I would say for me, it's probably labor. There was probably a time where I think we could probably look at different seasons of our life, and maybe that answer would be different.
Yes, we talked about that.
Yeah,
Yep.
and so I think that if you would have asked 5 years ago, Obie, finances would have been at the top. The Lord really broke me down and built me back up in that area of my walk, and finances, it instead of knowing the words, just like we talked on the last, and
Just be honest.
yes, and instead of knowing the words and not living it, and knowing what God wanted me to do for my life, and not living that what I know, He broke me down, and I began living in obedience when it came to what God asked out of us from a financial standpoint, and so now I feel like it's like walking, from that standpoint. But then it was not even an option, you know. Now I would want, what you just said about the chains, the analogy you gave there about the chainsaw, and like just that really resonates with me, you know. Like
Now, listen, I'll do it.
I'll do it too.
I'll do it.
You know it. You
Same.
know that.
But like in my heart, I really don't want to be doing this.
Right.
And it's funny because I love serving people,
Yeah.
and I love to do what I want to do,
Yeah.
from a labor standpoint. But when it's maybe something I don't want to do, and it's still, maybe God's still convicting you to do it, and that's when I'm like, you know, how much that's going to cost, you know, or whatever.
Yeah, and being, generous too, it goes to where our heart's at when we're doing it. Because if I'm helping a buddy cut a tree up and I don't want to be there, that's the same as just not being there in my heart and in the view of God.
Right.
Well, I think there's a verse in the Bible that says that.
Yeah.
You know, if you're doing it with malice in your heart, may as well have not done it.
Yeah. Or if you're doing it for some kind of a gain.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, it's like,
Yes.
where,
What am I going to get?
It's when I feel like the ultimate level of serving is whenever they have nothing to offer you. And I feel like that's where God wants us to be.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
So, Shaun, you said finances.
Yeah, I just feel like, so, we have a certain amount of money that we give back to ministry, and then like I feel like that we'll go out and buy something silly that's a material thing that we really don't need, and I'm like, why didn't we just give that to the church, or why we could have done a lot of good with this, and above and beyond what we gave. And
Right.
I love the idea of committing a company to the Lord and saying, look, God, we're gonna back off personally. We're selling our house, and we're gonna downgrade, and we're going to try to live a simpler lifestyle, but with our business, we're going to make a commitment to you, and this is our commitment with our business.
Yeah.
And 50% of all that we net is we're going to give it back
We're
to
gonna
you.
give that to
mean,
you.
and that's powerful, man. I mean, there's
Go ahead.
just not a whole lot of people that do that.
No. And at the end of this story that they're telling, they said, he said, we got to a point where we were just like, let's just give it all away. And
Francis Chan says that.
let's just give it all
He's
away.
like, at the end of my life, I don't want to leave my kids with anything. I just want to give it all away.
Yeah, and he said, I talked to my accountant and my finance people, and they're like, that's almost impossible. He said, you've got this $400 million company. You're going to give it away. And he said, I called my buddy down at the ministry, I think that they dealt with most Christian something. And he said, within 15 minutes, he said, we had a plan together. And so he said, you can't give it all away. Right now, you can give 99% of it away. You hold the 1%, and you're still on the controlling board, and then we can work towards that 100%. So they gave it all away.
Really?
All of it.
All of their net profits.
Think about this, okay? If this company was profiting, okay, they're about a $400 million company. They're profiting about $40 million a year. And now he's paying himself, $100,000 a year. That in reality is less than 0.25% of the profits of what his company was doing. So
Sure is.
let that marinate for a minute.
It's less than 0.25%. It is
a quarter.
It's a
It's a
quarter
quarter of
of 1%.
Yeah. Another guy, R.G. Letourneau. Y'all ever heard of him?
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
Letourneau Schools, he's the major benefactor behind that. Letourneau Industries here in Longview. This guy, I don't know when this happened in his journey, but he was giving away 90%
Yeah.
of his.
I remember hearing that. I think he wrote a book. He's got a book that
Okay.
talks about it. Stan Baker was telling me
I've
about
heard of
that
a
book.
lot. I've heard of several renowned theologians or pastors. I want to say maybe Tony Evans was one of them, where he was giving away 100% of his salary that he would make pastoring. But he got to a point where he was making millions of dollars off of his book sales and that kind of stuff. So I don't know how much of his of the money that he had coming in that he was giving away, but it's
still a big deal.
It was an insane amount.
It's a big deal. There's a reason. When's the last time that you truly gave sacrificially, expecting nothing in return, and only because God told you to? You don't have to answer that out loud, but think of a moment of when you did that and then how you felt. And there's a reason that God allows us to feel that way when we sacrificially give ourselves to others for his kingdom. It's a feeling that you cannot manufacture in any other walk of life.
Yeah, it's you're right.
It's intrinsic.
And I mean, for those that aren't, in maybe a active church group, or, most of our lives we've heard you can't outgive God.
Mm-hmm.
You can't outgive God. I look at it as I'm just being obedient, by giving my tithes to the Lord and trying to be generous with my life and be a servant, and I'm trying to ultimately emulate him. But I believe that in my heart, I do believe that in my quest to do that, I'm going to become more like him, and I do believe that he will continue to be my provider, continue to bless my life and bless my family's life, because I'm being obedient to him. So, great stuff, Shane.
At the
end of
the day, it requires total surrender. And we talk about that in all aspects of our life, the things that we have trouble giving up, whether it has to do with being generous or some other issue. Total surrender, giving up control.
So what's the name of that study again?
It's called Journey to Generosity.
Yeah.
And we'll probably do another one. It was like 16 people, I believe, or 8 couples, maybe 9 couples, maybe 10. There's a decent amount of people there. But it's just like, it's spurring you on to have creative conversations about what we can do for the Lord.
Sure.
Through generosity.
I know some guys here in Longview, man, there's some jam up guys, and they have multi-million-dollar companies, and they have one company that they started that is solely, the profit of that company is solely, it's a for-profit company, but all the profit goes towards kingdom work.
That's awesome.
And it's really cool.
That's awesome.
They made that commitment. And years ago, I met these guys about 10 or 15 years ago.
Mention it on here so that listeners, our local listeners, if they want to help get
Yeah,
involved?
man, I don't remember the name.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember the name of the company. It was about 10 years ago that they told me about it.
Okay.
But I do know today that company is thriving and doing millions of dollars.
So
Sounds like a great guest
Yeah.
possibility.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to
Yeah.
have them on.
Yeah.
I know Chris Gordy has
Chris Chitwood is the guy's name. Chris Chitwood and Mark.
Smith.
No, I have. Yeah. Chris and Mark are partners.
Yeah.
And anyway, just some really jam up guys that Mark Miller
Oh yeah.
and Chris Chitwood. It's their company,
Okay.
and it's rocking.
Mark lives in Longview, doesn't he?
He does.
I know
yeah.
Mark. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate you being here. Remember, hit those like, share, subscribe buttons, whether you're listening or watching on YouTube, iTunes, Pandora, Spotify, wherever you're coming from. We appreciate you being here. Help us reach more people for Jesus. Go out and kick the day in the face, and we'll catch you on the next one.